Sorry?
One of the benefits is with the job centres, isn't it? Why should I be paying you because I've got your computer? Like, you can't use the computer for no benefit.
Oh, I see. Only access online. Yeah, it is. The question is accessing benefits online only. It's fair point.
Yeah. We don't have the customers of the mostly our customers are European, so we don't have the business these days. And we don't know what happened, and we survive very hard. So that's what yeah. When the European is with the UK, so that time the business is spoiling there. But this time, it's very bad.
Thank you.
So please,
This way, we need to get moving now.
and also,
Oh, thank you. Was it painful?
No, it's quite
Thanks, mate. Thank you.
Must have gone stand like man.
Thanks.
Good. Good.
Nothing like pain au chocolat. You have to be British, does it?
Hello. No questions. Stop it.
I'm just trying to tell him to look at the bill.
Welcome down to Grays. We've spent the morning just walking around the High Street and had a wonderful, wonderful response for Jeremy and the Labour Party and our message of hope for Thurrock. And we know here that that's what we need in Thurrock. Today's not about very long speeches though, it's about getting out the doors and, as we did this morning, talking to actual voters here in Thurrock and persuading them to change their minds, because we only need another 345 votes to make sure we elect a Labour MP here. To introduce our next Prime Minister, Jeremy Corbyn.
Thanks, Oliver. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming along this morning. I've been warned not to do an hour and a quarter. I could, but I won't. Thank you for coming, and thank you for your work and support for the party. We've just been doing a walk around in the market, and I've had a wonderful cheese and onion roll. I've got some fried yams, which I'm going to eat later on. I've got some coffee, and I denied the press the opportunity of seeing me eating a sandwich. Because, you know, stuff happens with that. You can go wrong, and it's not a great idea. We've got a bit of campaigning to do this morning, and we're doing this all over the country. The general election result was good, but not quite good enough. And I'm really sorry that we didn't quite win here. 300 and a bit votes. Wow. Wow. So next time we'll run an even longer campaign. But well done all of you for that campaign, and clearly to get a Labour government we've got to win here. No question about it. We've got to win here. We've got to gain some more seats in the East Midlands and particularly in Scotland. And so after the general election, I thought the best way to spend the summer was on the campaign trail, because I got used to it. I had 3 years of it. And it's truly wonderful. We did 50 constituencies over the summer with a lot of public meetings and very big rallies, but also a lot of time meeting small groups of pensioners, of tenants groups, of small businesses, of trade unions, visiting various places. Spent a lot of time talking to and listening to people. And that sense of anger and despair that's there amongst young people that have worked really hard to get qualifications and can't find jobs, older people that want the security of decent social care and know it's not available, but also want the security of a community and family around them. And housing stress makes that very, very difficult to achieve in many parts of the country. But it's also about challenging this government. We've had 7 years of austerity, and I don't know if you listened to everything that was said in Brighton this week, but the point that I made in the conference speech was that 2017 is the year when politics caught up with the great crash of 2008. And we've now had 7 years of austerity. We've had 7 years of a much wider gap between the richest and poorest in our society than has ever been in my lifetime, and that gap is getting wider and wider. So all those cuts in public expenditure have hit the wages of public sector workers, have cut the services, have made life incredibly difficult for councils and incredibly difficult for councillors who are faced with all the stress of constituents coming to them with housing needs, with social care needs, all those kind of issues, and having real difficulty with the resources to deal with it. And so it is a question about how we as a party deal with that. So fundamentally, we're saying no more austerity. We will invest, and we'll invest by a combination of tax rises and borrowing. Now, I'm not ashamed to say we'll borrow, because the only way you invest to grow is to borrow. And then John McDonnell, with my absolute support, made a very strong statement about ending private finance initiative within the NHS and education system. Straight after he made that statement, I was challenged on this, saying this is going to cost a great deal of money. You're going to bankrupt the country by buying all these PFIs, as though the PFIs are some kind of private sector thing we're buying that was never there before. Sorry, it's our debt at the moment. We are paying the PFI debt at the moment. So exchanging PFI debts for government bonds will mean we're paying 2 to 3% interest instead of 15 to 18% interest on PFI. And it will also mean that the control of school buildings and hospitals will return to the school and the hospital rather than a distant facilities company organised through the PFI. And so I say that today, not because I'm sure I need to persuade any of you of the sense of this policy, but because we have a period, I don't know how long that period's going to be, in order to challenge this government on this and get the debate and argument out there. If you want to live in a society that does provide decent healthcare and social care for all, does provide a properly funded education service, then you have to develop the policies to do that, and you have to explain and develop those policies. And so, please never be afraid of getting into that political debate. The purpose of today is hope. The purpose of today is showing people that things can be and will be done very differently in the future. But it's also about how we develop our ideas and policies. I set out some very strong lines on housing in the conference because the housing crisis is desperate and real. You were telling me there's 8,000 people on the housing waiting list in this council alone. And it's not the biggest council in Britain by any manner of means. 8,000 families living in stress. All of those children living in stress, overcrowded in so many parts of the country, insecure private rented accommodation, overcrowded council accommodation. It's very damaging to those children. Think it through. A child growing up under stress is less likely to be happy, less likely to do well in primary school, even less likely to do well in secondary, even less likely to get to college, and very unlikely to get to university. What happens? That child loses out on achieving their potential. We lose out on the nurse, the doctor, the engineer, the plumber, the electrician, whoever it was going to be, whatever that child was going to do. It's a false economy. It's idiotic. Let's instead invest in our children for their future and for the future of all of us. That's the Labour way of doing it. Had a counterproductive effect. Secondly, was the work that a lot of you put in, I'm sure there's plenty in this room that did it, of encouraging 2 million more people to vote in the election. That was a game changer. As was the kicking in of broadcasting rules, which meant we had to have at least some semblance of balance in the way in which the matters were reported. And last night, Theresa May made a really interesting statement. She said the problem of the election was the failure of people to debate. I was really trying to get my head around this one last night, because I distinctly remember going to debates where she wasn't there. I mean, unless she definitely was not there. And one of the debates was kind of a bit strange. It was a Sky News debate. She refused to come into the debate, so she's in an office in the Sky building next door to my room, where I had an office there for the purpose of the debate. And she refused to come out while I was speaking, and I was shuffled out of the way when she was speaking, so there was no danger whatsoever of us interacting. Well, I'm, a generous grown-up person. I'm happy to talk to anybody and debate with anybody our policies, our views, and our values. Because I'll tell you what, our values of community, of solidarity, of support for people, of the idea that everybody can contribute to our world and our society, and nobody should be left behind, are pretty decent, normal, reasonable human values. We are not going to be a government that walks by on the other side, past the homeless, past the poor, past those that are suffering from mental health conditions or all other things. We're going to be there. Yes, we will intervene. Yes, we'll support those services. Yes, we will ask the very richest to pay a bit more in tax. I tell you what, because it's necessary. We cannot go on going down the road of greater inequality, injustice, and this yawning gap between the richest and the poorest. So when we get that message out there, as we're going to do in a few minutes, it actually unifies people. They begin to think of what they can achieve together rather than being divided and separated. So I'm very proud of our party, very proud of our now getting on towards 600,000 members. I'm very proud of the way we've turned ourselves into a campaigning party. So you're here today, going out, knocking on doors in this constituency. There are 450 other events going on at exactly this moment, all over Britain. The Labour Party out campaigning every day. And I'm really proud of that, and that's what we're going to do. I can't tell you when the next election is going to come, but I tell you this, a government that thinks it's confident and effective in office, we put down 2 parliamentary motions. One, to limit the rise in student fees, coming up immediately, and the second was to end the NHS public sector pay cut. They didn't even vote on them because they knew that if they had, they'd expose their weakness and inability to win it. 3 months after they claim they won an election, they can't even defend their own policies in Parliament. We're back in Parliament on Monday week. I had a long meeting yesterday to work out tactics and strategy of what we're doing. But I tell you this, you're going to like it. We're going to take it to them, day in, day out, all the time. Challenge, challenge, challenge. The people of this country need a government that cares for them, not a government that cares for the few. Need a government that invests for all, not for the few. Needs a government that really wants a future for all of our children and relates to the rest of the world in a grown-up, adult and sensible way. We negotiate, we talk, we relate to people. We don't go down the road of war, we don't go down the road of all of that aggressive foreign policy we've seen for too long. It's the Labour way of doing things. I'm proud to lead our party, delighted to be here with you, but I'm getting glared at by some of my dearest and most lovely friends at the moment. What they're saying, I can hear the voice coming through now, shut up, Jetta. It's time to get out on the doorstep. So can I invite all of you now to join us all together, get out there and knocking on doors, because winning council seats here next year, gaining council seats, will bring us much nearer to getting the return of a Labour council in Thurrock, very, very important, but will also give us that platform, that basis to win this constituency for Labour, and we'll be back with all the places as soon as candidates have been selected, because I'm absolutely determined that next time I'm not going to limit myself to a mere 100 events during an election campaign. We're going to do the job properly. We're going to go absolutely everywhere, including here. Thank you very much, Thurrock.
Corbyn, you've just got an extremely warm reception in Grays High Street, which may have surprised some people, but you enjoyed walking down Grays High Street.
Absolutely, it was great. We just had a chat with various stallholders and traders, and I bought a very nice cheese and onion roll. I bought a very nice dish of fried yam, which I'm going to eat later on, and a nice coffee. I had a chat with a lot of people. Traders telling me that they're working hard, but some of them were a bit up against it. And a lot of people came up to say that they were really pleased with the outcome of our conference and what we're doing and our manifesto, and looking for a better life for their children for the future. It was really warm, it was wonderful. Just wished it could have gone on longer.
Speaking about the people, when were we back in Harlow in the town park in May, and people thought it was a bit funny that you faced the wrong way. You remember that moment?
Yeah, so did I.
Do you actually think there was an irony? Actually, maybe you were facing the right way?
Well, yes, the choreography of meetings is always strange, because it's very odd when we're trying to film a meeting and you've got most of the audience behind you, because my natural instinct is to talk with people and listen to what they have to say, and I find it very strange sort of looking around like this all the time with the audience behind you. But that was early part of the campaign, lovely event there in Town Park. And we just went on around the country. We did 100 events, and gradually it grew and it grew and it grew. And the last day of the campaign, we did 6 rallies, starting in Glasgow and ending up in my constituency late that night. So we did 14 hours of rallies all day.
But here in Thurrock, you've heard a lot from leader of the Labour group, Oliver Gerrish, and John Kent about the problems here. I mean, things like homelessness, crime. So, you know, for an area which is also, though, is an area of regeneration, there are a great deal of problems.
Yeah,
here.
Oliver was talking to me about some of the problems of, I understand, 8,000 people waiting for allocation of council housing, serious problems of air pollution, partly because of traffic and partly because of the location east of London, which means that prevailing west winds obviously blow this way, and issues of regeneration, so that everyone gets a decent chance for somewhere to live, and you end up with an economic regeneration. So Thurrock is not just a commuter town, nothing wrong with commuting, but it's not the only existence. And I think Oliver has some very good ideas about how the town could develop.
But it's now 7 years since, well, you know Andrew McKinley, 7 years since a Labour MP. They're close, aren't they? What do you think, with that 3, 4, 5 gap, what do you think is going to bridge it?
I think what will bridge it is a clarity from us on housing, on education and on investment. And the point I made to the party members just now was that we've set out what we're going to do on private finance initiative, what we're going to do with the National Investment Bank, and then I'm asking all the parties to develop that as a local strategy and local policy. So I want the party members going out, talking to people in the community. What kind of housing do you want? What sort of tenure model do you want? What sort of cooperatives do you want on housing? What kind of industrial investment? What sort of transport infrastructure? What kind of bus service? And so that fits in with what we're trying to do on a national scale, so that come the time of a Labour government, we'll be very clear of what we want to do and how we're going to do it, because I want to get onto it straight away. We want to hit the ground running.
10 years ago, the BNP got 25% of the vote in the local elections here. UKIP have 17 councillors, and this is probably the only constituency which their vote didn't fall off a cliff. They still got 10,122 votes. How are you able to speak to that tranche of voters?
Yes, because what I would say to them is this: UKIP don't actually offer any solutions. All they offer is a counsel of despair. If as a communities we live together, we work together, we support each other, we achieve things together, if we spend our time blaming each other, nothing gets better. You only get a nasty atmosphere and nothing is achieved. And all over the country, the UKIP vote is falling, in many cases enormously, less so here. But I just say to those that voted UKIP, listen to what we have to say. Please try and understand that we as a party come from working class communities. We're founded by trade unions. We're founded to deliver a government for the working class of this country as well as everybody else. And that's why Labour brought in the National Health Service. That's why Labour is committed to council housing. That's why Labour is committed to education from the cradle to the grave for all.
Jeremy Corbyn, thank you very much for your time.